So, I want you to picture something for a second.
Okay, lay it on me.
You're sitting at this small, like slightly weathered wooden table outside a cafe.
Right.
The air is mild, and the sun is just starting to dip. So you get this incredible, warm, golden light over this entire urban landscape that's made of literal rose-colored stone.
So that's pretty ideal so far.
Oh, it gets better. In front of you is an absolute feast. You've got a plate of sizzling lamb khor virap.
Oh, that incredible local barbecue.
Exactly. And like a basket of lavish bread that was literally just pulled out of a sunken clay oven minutes ago. Plus a fresh, crisp salad and an ice-cold local beer.
I mean, I'm getting hungry just hearing about it.
Right. So you eat all of this, you're completely full, and you asked for the bill.
Eh.
The total comes to exactly $4.
Yeah, see, that sounds like a fabricated memory, doesn't it?
It really does.
Or like maybe a story someone tells about traveling through Southeast Asia back in the late 90s, before globalized tourism standardized everything.
Yeah, that is exactly the vibe it gives off. You hear a price like that, and you just assume you must be in some remote rural village that's completely cut off from the modern world.
But you aren't.
No, you really aren't. You are sitting in the center of a major European-adjacent capital city.
With like lightning-fast Wi-Fi and a thriving tech scene right around the corner.
Exactly. And just a few blocks away, you can go back to a hostel dorm bed in the exact center of town that costs you $10 a night.
Which is wild.
It is. We are talking about Yerevan, Armenia, in the year 2026.
And that actually brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive.
Yeah, let's get into the sources.
So today we are taking a massive stack of economic data, regional geopolitical briefs, and our primary source, which is this very revealing boots-on-the-ground document called Yerevan 2026, the Honest Budget Travel Guide.
A great read, by the way.
It really is. But our goal here isn't just to read you a travel itinerary.
No, definitely not.
We're acting as a sort of economic and cultural forensic team for you. We need to extract the truth from these sources.
Right, like, is this city still the ultimate budget secret hiding in plain sight on the global map?
Exactly. Or, have the massive geopolitical shifts and the recent surge in regional migration permanently closed that window.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the way I look at this situation, it's like finding a pristine, hidden vintage store.
Oh, I like that analogy.
You know the kind I mean.
Oh.
Like, the racks are full of incredible, high-quality items for pennies, the owner is lovely, and nobody knows it exists.
Right.
But then you see massive tour bus pull up, and 50 people with smartphones walk in.
And the secret is out.
Exactly. You just know the structural economics of that store are about to change forever.
Yeah.
So you are desperately trying to figure out, like, can I still get the deals before the sheer volume of global demand just ruins the pricing?
I think we can actually take that analogy even further.
How so?
Well, it's not just a tour bus pulling up. It's people deciding to move their desks into the back of the vintage store and live there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which fundamentally alters the entire ecosystem. But to truly understand why the prices are shifting right now, we can't just look at a spreadsheet from 2026.
Right. You need context.
Exactly. We first have to understand the foundational identity of the city itself, like the actual soil it's built on.
And when we say the soil, we are talking about deep, deep time. Let's talk about the visual identity first.
Yeah, the pink stone.
Right, because that rose-colored stone I mentioned in the intro isn't just a quaint design choice. It is the defining characteristic of the Pink City moniker.
It is. The majority of Yerevan's central architecture is constructed from this specific volcanic tuff stone.
Tuff, T-U-F-F.
Yes, tuff. It's basically consolidated volcanic ash. It's a naturally occurring material in the Armenian highlands, and it gives the entire urban landscape this visual identity that is completely unlike anything else in the Caucasus.
Or really anywhere else in the world.
Right. Depending on the time of day, the season, and how the light hits it, the city literally glows in these shifting shades of pink, orange, and deep ochre.
It's a brilliant example of a city being built out of the literal earth it sits upon.
Yeah, it really is stunning to look at.
But here's where the timeline of that earth gets really hard to wrap your head around.
Oh, the history.
Yeah, because you walk around these pink buildings, looking at cafes and tech hubs, and it's easy to just lose a sense of historical scale.
Sure.
But according to our historical sources, Yerevan was founded in 782 BCE.
It's hard to even conceptualize that.
It started as the Erbuni fortress, which was an ancient Urartian military settlement. That makes the city roughly 30 years older than Rome.
Let that sink in for a second.
Right. You are drinking a modern craft beer in a city older than the Roman Empire.
It's a staggering reality when you put it in that context. You have this ancient foundation.
One of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on the planet.
Exactly. But the modern visitor doesn't actually see a sprawling ancient ruin when they arrive.
No, not at all.
You contrast that deep time with what you actually experience walking around the center today, which is this grand, almost surreal, early 20th century Soviet-era spatial ambition.
I'm glad you brought that up. Places like Republic Square, the massive Cascade Staircase, Northern Avenue.
Right.
These aren't ancient structures. They were built or entirely redesigned during the Soviet period, largely based on the master plan of an architect named Alexander Tamanyan in the 1920s.
And Tamanyan's vision is totally crucial to understanding the city's vibe.
How so?
Well, you have the sheer scale and ambition of Soviet urban planning, right?
Yeah, these incredibly wide boulevards.
Exactly. Monumental neoclassical structures,
Yeah.
immense identical symmetrical facades that are all designed to project power and order.
But like, instead of being rendered in that brutalist, depressing gray concrete we typically associate with Soviet architecture.
Right, from Moscow to East Berlin.
Yeah, instead of that, it's all carved out of this warm pink volcanic rock.
It creates an incredible architectural tension.
It really does. It's an authoritarian spatial ambition rendered in soft, warm pink stone.
And speaking of tension, we really cannot ignore the emotional geography of this place.
Ah, Mount Ararat.
Yes, because you are walking around this pink, ancient yet Soviet city, and looming over you, visible from almost every higher vantage point in Yerevan, is Mount Ararat.
It's this haunting, snow-capped, magnificent stratovolcano.
It is. It sits right there on the Armenian coat of arms.
Yeah.
It's widely considered the sacred historical soul of the Armenian people.
Yet physically, geographically,
Right.
it lies across a closed border in modern-day Turkey.
And this is perhaps the most profound psychological element of visiting Yerevan.
I mean, the mountain dominates the skyline.
It dominates the art, the branding of local products, the national consciousness. But that border with Turkey has been sealed for decades due to deep, unresolved historical conflicts.
I have to ask, though, just from a purely human perspective, how does a population wake up every day, look out the window at the absolute pinnacle symbol of their national identity, and know they cannot legally walk to the base of it?
It's a heavy thought.
Like, how does a city define its entire soul by a mountain it can look at but not touch?
Well, it creates a unique emotional core that permeates the entire Yerevan experience.
Right.
It is a daily, inescapable visual reminder of historical loss and geopolitical complication. The mountain is so massive and so close that you feel like you could just reach out and touch it on a clear day.
But it's politically inaccessible.
Exactly. That tension between what the country claims as its spiritual home and what modern political borders have physically placed beyond its reach.
It's got to be intense.
It imbues the city with a specific kind of melancholy, but also really fierce cultural resilience. It's a defining characteristic that every visitor picks up on, even if they haven't read a single page of history before arriving.
Wow. So you have this visually stunning city, older than Rome, draped in Soviet architecture, and steeped in this profound emotional history.
Yeah, that's the baseline.
And for a long time, it was relatively quiet on the global tourism front. But then we dive into the data from our 2026 budget guide, and the numbers are just completely wild.
The data shock is absolute.
Yeah, let's get into that.
We are looking at a massive structural shift in the local economy. Just to put the baseline numbers on the table.
You do.
In April of 2026 alone, Armenia experienced a 39.6% year-over-year increase in tourism.
Almost 40% in 1 month.
Yes. They processed 625,843 international visitors in just the first 4 months of the year.
That's insane.
And the government is actively targeting 3 million total arrivals by the end of 2026.
I want to pause on those numbers for a second because context is everything here.
It really is.
Yerevan only has a population of about 1 million residents.
Right.
So you are talking about pouring 3 million visitors into a civic infrastructure designed for a third of that.
And if we look at the underlying mechanics, we have to ask what the catalysts are for this sudden, explosive growth.
Right. Why now?
There are two primary drivers outlined in our sources for 2026.
Okay.
The first is policy-driven. In January 2026, the Armenian government introduced a sweeping visa exemption for 113 countries.
And that allows citizens of places like the UK, the US, Australia, Canada, and the EU to enter without a visa. Right.
Correct. And stay for up to 180 days.
See, 180 days on a standard tourist stamp.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't just encouraging a 2-week vacation.
No, not at all.
That is basically rolling out the red carpet for the global digital nomad class. That is a government saying, please, bring your laptops and your foreign salaries and live here.
Precisely. It fundamentally alters the type of traveler arriving.
Yeah, that's day.
And the second catalyst is deeply geopolitical. We are still seeing the compounding legacy of the massive migration surge that began in February 2022 following the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine war.
Right.
Tens of thousands of Russians, specifically highly educated tech workers and entrepreneurs, relocated to Yerevan to escape the conflict, the draft, and the ensuing international sanctions.
And a significant portion of them simply never left.
Exactly. They absorbed the initial shock, set up businesses, moved their entire tech infrastructure, and completely integrated into the local economy.
And this brings us right back to the question of whether the budget travel era is ending.
Yes, the rent data.
Because that migration fundamentally altered the basic economics of the city, specifically the real estate market. Let's look at that rent data.
It's pretty shocking.
A decade ago, a basic no-frills apartment in Yerevan would cost you about 50,000 Armenian dram a month.
Which is roughly 127 US dollars.
Fast forward to 2026, that exact same basic unit is routinely renting for 130,000 to 140,000 dram.
So that's $331 to $356.
Yeah. And if you want to be in Kentron, which is the highly desirable central district with all the pink stone and cafes, you are looking at up to $637 a month.
The mechanism of this price spike is pure supply and demand, but driven by external, non-local capital.
Right.
You basically injected tens of thousands of foreign workers earning international tech salaries into a housing market built for local Armenian wages.
I'd argue it's an incredibly stark economic displacement.
Oh, absolutely.
Because for a digital nomad coming from London or New York, spending $637 a month for a central apartment in a beautiful, safe capital is an unbelievable steal.
It's practically free compared to Brooklyn or Soho.
Exactly. So for the local Armenian resident whose wages have not magically scaled by 400% in a few years, their own city is being repriced out from under them.
And that is the defining paradox of the modern pink city.
Yeah.
It functions as a budget paradise for the incoming foreign worker or tourist, but it represents an escalating affordability crisis for the local resident pouring their coffee.
That's tough.
The influx of foreign money doesn't just raise rent, it shifts the entire floor of the local economy.
That economic tension is exactly why you have to be so strategic about how you actually execute a trip here.
You really do.
Because if you blow your budget on poorly planned logistics, that budget advantage disappears before you even see your first piece of pink tough stone. So you're convinced by the history, you've got your visa-free passport ready, and you want that $4 Khor Virap's lunch.
But getting your boots on the ground requires navigating a very specific set of hurdles.
Yeah, let's look at the friction of arrival.
There is a definite friction to arriving in the Caucasus that you simply don't experience when you're taking, say, a high-speed train between Paris and Amsterdam.
The geography dictates everything. Let's do the flight math and look at the global map.
Because the word budget is entirely relative to your starting coordinates.
Exactly. If you are flying out of London, you are incredibly lucky. Our budget guide points out that low-cost carriers like Wizz Air and Flyoni Armenia have heavily expanded their routes.
Oh yeah, you can get a one-way ticket for as little as $110.
And return flights, if you look at the cheapest window, which is between November and January, start around $246.
For a flight of that distance, that is incredibly accessible.
It really is.
However, we have to contrast that European connectivity with non-European origins to manage expectations properly.
Right. What about the rest of the world?
If you are listening to this from Australia, which happens to be a massive source market for long-term travelers and nomads, the math changes entirely.
I can imagine.
You are looking at a grueling 17 to 20-hour trip, usually requiring long layovers in transit hubs like Dubai or Doha.
Ouch.
And it's going to cost you roughly $900 to $1,100 for a return ticket, even in the shoulder season.
And if you're flying out of North America, it's just as rough.
Really?
Yeah. From Toronto, brace yourself because you are looking at $1,295 and up.
Wow.
New York is slightly better, currently sitting around $621, but it still represents a major expense.
The underlying logic here is that for a Western European, Yerevan functions as a true budget trip from end to end. The transit is cheap and the ground costs are cheap.
Right.
But for an Australian or a North American, this so-called budget destination requires a significant upfront capital investment just to cross the threshold.
Yeah, the ground costs might be low, but you have to amortize a $1,000 flight over the duration of your stay to figure out your true daily average.
That's a great point. You have to stay longer to make the flight math work.
Exactly. But okay, let's say you paid the airfare, you endured the agonizing layover in Dubai, and you finally touched down at Zvartnots International Airport.
Which is located about 12 kilometers west of the city center.
The good news up front, because the airport is relatively small and they've implemented that new visa-free regime for Western passports, immigration is remarkably fast.
Yeah, you are usually through and at the baggage carousel in under 30 minutes.
You grab your bag, you walk out through the sliding glass doors.
And boom.
Boom. You hit logistics trap number 1, the Zvartnots Airport taxi ambush.
This is a classic travel scenario found all over the world, but it operates with very specific mechanics in Yerevan due to a lack of curbside infrastructure.
I can picture perfectly. You are completely jet-lagged, you've just cleared customs, you haven't even seen the sky yet, and you are approached inside the terminal by a very confident, well-dressed man.
Right?
He says he's an official taxi driver. You ask how much to the center, and he smoothly quotes you $25, maybe $35.
And because you are a tired Westerner whose brain is still operating on New York or London pricing.
Exactly. You think, well, $30 from an international airport to a city center. That sounds entirely reasonable.
And you hand over the cash without blinking.
Yep.
And that psychological mismatch is the lived reality of the trap. The driver is relying on your lack of localized price anchoring.
That's not dangerous.
No. It's important to know this is not a dangerous situation, and it's not even technically illegal in the way they operate.
Oh, wait.
It is simply unregulated freelance pricing capitalizing on an information gap.
Right.
The mechanism driving this is that Zvartnots, unlike many modern airports, lacks a strictly enforced regulated taxi queue system with fixed metered fares, physically preventing freelancers from soliciting inside the terminal.
So what is the actual fix? Because if the entire point of this trip is budget travel, we are not voluntarily handing over $35 for a ride that should cost a fraction of that.
The fix is to completely ignore anyone who approaches you while you are still walking inside the terminal building.
Just walk past them.
Keep your head down and walk until you are past the initial exit area. There is an official aero taxi counter.
Okay.
The correct government-mandated rate to the city center is 3,000 AMD.
Which at current exchange rates, that is approximately $7.60.
You must explicitly negotiate and confirm that fixed price before you put a single bag into the vehicle.
Right.
And under no circumstances should you accept a, quote, over 4,500 AMD for a standard car.
Just push back. It's okay to say no and walk away.
Exactly. The power is entirely yours.
Are there other options?
Well, alternatively, if you arrive during daylight hours and you aren't dragging massive heavy suitcases, the infrastructure does offer a local option.
The bus, right?
Yes. There is a Route 201 public bus that runs directly to the center. It takes a bit longer, about 35 to 40 minutes, but it costs 300 AMD.
That is 75 cents.
Yep.
75 cents versus $35. I mean, that is the literal definition of an information tax.
It really is.
This is why we are doing this deep dive. Or, honestly, if you want the absolute path of least resistance, just download the Yandex Taxi or Gigi Taxi app on your phone before you leave your home country.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. Order the car when you clear customs. The app price is algorithmically locked and always honest.
Utilizing local ride-hailing apps is definitively the most foolproof method to bypass the curbside economy entirely.
Definitely.
But getting from the airport to your hotel is only the first logistical hurdle. The second trap is far more severe, and it involves the broader geopolitical map of the Caucasus.
Right. This is logistics trap number 2.
Yeah.
The geopolitical border track.
This one is serious.
Usually when we plan a trip, our biggest anxiety is whether the airline is going to lose our luggage or if we pack the right universal power adapter.
Sure.
But in this specific region, an ink stamp in your passport can literally bring your entire trip to a grinding halt.
It can.
We need to explain how a traveler actually sequences a trip through this region.
It requires meticulous forethought. You cannot just wing a multi-country tour here.
You really have to plan it out.
You have to understand the complex, deeply rooted reality of Caucasus travel. The primary issue is that Armenia and its eastern neighbor, Azerbaijan, have absolutely no diplomatic relations.
None at all.
None. And this isn't just a bureaucratic spat. This stems from the decades-long, deeply entrenched and violent conflict over the Nagorno-Karabakh region.
For our listeners who might not follow regional geopolitics closely,
Yeah.
we should probably give a very brief summary of what that conflict actually is,
Good idea.
because it explains why the borders are so rigid.
Certainly. In the simplest possible terms, without diving into a textbook, Nagorno-Karabakh is a landlocked mountainous region that has historically been populated by ethnic Armenians.
Okay.
But it was internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan following the collapse of the Soviet Union. This territorial and ethnic dispute has resulted in multiple devastating wars over the last 30 years, with massive displacement and deep-seated animosity on both sides.
Which is tragic.
Because of this active, unresolved historical trauma, the borders between the two nations are completely sealed and heavily militarized.
Okay, that context is vital. So if you are a backpacker trying to do a grand tour of the Caucasus,
Yeah.
thinking you can just take a bus from Georgia, pop down into Armenia, and then casually take a train over to Azerbaijan, you are fundamentally misunderstanding the map.
Absolutely not. You can't just bounce back and forth.
The borders are closed.
Yes. The mechanism of this specific travel trap is that having an Azerbaijani border stamp in your passport can trigger significant complications, intense interrogations, or outright denial of entry when you try to cross into Armenia.
Wow.
And the reverse is also true, often with even stricter enforcement.
So what's the rule?
The absolute golden rule for sequencing a multi-country Caucasus trip in 2026 is always do Armenia before Azerbaijan.
Usually utilizing Georgia as a neutral transit hub in between, right?
Exactly.
Armenia first. Write that down.
Yes. Furthermore, you must constantly monitor your own government's travel advisories. And there is a hard, absolute ban on any tourist attempting to enter the Nagorno-Karabakh region or the Lachin corridor.
This is not a dark tourism opportunity.
No, it is an active conflict zone. If your passport shows any evidence of entering that specific territory from the Azerbaijani side without Armenian authorization, Armenia will likely deny you entry entirely.
That is a hard stop. It's not a fine. It's not a scolding. Your trip is over.
It is over. Now, to be fair to the current data, our sources note that a tentative peace framework was signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan in 2025.
Okay, that sounds positive.
It is, but as of mid-2026, the full comprehensive treaty remains unratified. The situation along that eastern border remains fragile.
It's paramount that travelers understand they are moving through a region with active, shifting geopolitical fault lines and act with the appropriate respect and caution.
Exactly.
I think that's a crucial point. Travel isn't just a theme park. You are walking through living history.
Very well said.
But let's assume you've done your homework. You sequenced your trip perfectly, you navigated the airport taxi mafia, and you are safely in the city center.
Now what?
You actually have to figure out where you are going to sleep. And more importantly, you need to know when you should actually be booking this trip to begin with.
Yes.
This brings us to the accommodation squeeze and the calendar game.
The calendar really dictates the cost in Yerevan right now.
How so?
The city's tourist season has a very distinct, almost counterintuitive shape compared to standard European destinations.
Let's define the sweet spots for the listener.
Sure.
If you want the absolute perfect balance of comfortable weather, lower pricing, and general livability, you are looking at the shoulder seasons,
Which are?
April through June and September through October. The daily temperatures are sitting beautifully, around 18 to 22 degrees Celsius.
Perfect for walking around.
Exactly. That's when the outdoor cafe culture is just thriving. You can walk around in a light jacket, drink your coffee by the cascade, and it feels like absolute magic.
But then you encounter the peak season. And by peak, we mean both extreme heat and extreme expense. July and August are brutally, punishingly hot in the Caucasus, often hitting 35 degrees Celsius or higher.
Yeah, that is sweltering.
But strangely, despite that heat, August is by far the most crowded and expensive month of the year.
I found this deeply confusing when I first read the guide.
It seems backwards.
Why on earth is the highest demand during the most uncomfortable weather? Why go when it's sweltering?
The mechanism driving this is what economists and sociologists call the diaspora effect. To understand it, you have to know that the global Armenian diaspora is massive. Estimates put it at several million people, which is significantly larger than the actual domestic population of Armenia itself.
That's incredible.
And every single summer, particularly in July and August when global schools are out, Enormous Armenian communities from France, the United States, Russia, and Lebanon return to Yerevan.
To visit extended family.
Yes, to reconnect with their cultural heritage and spend their vacations in the homeland.
Which, on a human level, is a really beautiful cultural phenomenon. It's a massive annual reunion.
It is.
But purely from an economic and logistical standpoint, it completely upends the local accommodation market.
It creates an artificial scarcity. And the guide also notes that June and December see significant price bumps due to diaspora and diaspora-adjacent demand clustering around holidays and early summer events.
And this leads directly into logistics trap number 3, the summer squeeze.
Yeah, let's talk about the glaring infrastructure flaw here.
Because the contrast is wild. According to the numbers, there are fewer quality, dedicated budget hostel beds in the entirety of Yerevan than there are on a single popular backpacker street in a city like Chiang Mai, Thailand.
That is a staggering comparison,
Right.
but it perfectly illustrates the reality on the ground. The physical infrastructure for budget travel, the actual number of bunk beds and cheap private rooms, has not scaled to meet the massive 39.6% tourism surge of 2026.
The city is basically playing catch-up. So if you are one of those travelers, and let's be honest, I have absolutely been this person in my 20s who books the cheap $110 Wizz Air flight first and says, oh, it's fine, I'll figure out a cheap hostel when I land.
You are going to be in full-blown panic mode.
Seriously. In August, good budget and mid-range places are fully booked 4 to 6 weeks in advance.
Wow.
A decent mid-range Airbnb that might cost you $71 a night in the pleasant weather of May will artificially inflate to $120 or even $140 a night in the first 2 weeks of August, simply because there is nowhere else to sleep.
The primary takeaway here is a strict rule of thumb. Treat August in Yerevan exactly that you would treat June in Venice or July in Kyoto.
You must secure your accommodation before you confirm your flights.
Book the bed, then the flight.
Right.
So let's break down the actual accommodation tiers, assuming our listener is smart and booking at the right time.
Let's do it.
If you are on a strict budget, you are looking at established places like the Envoy Hostel or the Kantar Hostel, both located in the central Kentron district.
You can still manage to get a dorm bed there for $10 to $19 a night, or a very basic private room for $25 to $51.
And as we move up a tier, the mid-range is really where Yerevan begins to severely outcompete Western Europe on value.
Tell me more about that.
You can find these incredible boutique guest houses scattered throughout the Kentron or Arab Care districts for $50 to $90 a night.
That's a great price.
And what's fascinating about these spaces is that they're often located inside unassuming, brutalist Soviet-era apartment blocks.
Oh, I love that contrast.
Yeah, but the interiors have been lovingly renovated into modern, design-forward spaces.
Nice.
Alternatively, you can secure an entire well-appointed Airbnb apartment for $71 to $140 a night.
And then at the upper or luxury end of the spectrum, you have boutique places like the Elysium Gallery Hotel running $90 to $140.
Or the really big ones.
Right, the massive historic institutions like the Annie Grand Hotel and the Marriott Armenia situated right on Republic Square.
Those flagship properties are going to run you $150 to $300 or more per night.
But let's contextualize that luxury pricing.
We definitely should.
If you pay $300 a night in Yerevan, you are getting a massive luxury suite overlooking the premier historical square of the nation with world-class service.
Yep.
If you try to spend $300 a night in central London or Manhattan in 2026, you are getting a windowless budget closet next to an elevator shaft where you can touch both walls from the foot of the bed.
Yeah, the comparative value proposition remains incredibly strong. Even at the absolute highest luxury tier, you are paying a fraction of what a comparable experience would cost in a traditional Western capital.
So you've secured your bed, you're walking out of your hotel, and you are wandering the safe, well-lit streets of the center.
Now it's time to eat.
And honestly, this is where the real soul and the real economic value of the city reveals itself. We need to talk about the culinary architecture of Armenia.
I would argue that Armenian food is frankly criminally underrated on the global culinary stage.
Absolutely.
It hasn't been commodified globally the way Italian or Thai food has. It is a cuisine built entirely on ancient preservation techniques, communal eating, and incredibly fresh, hyper-local agrarian ingredients.
Let's list the heavy hitters so people know what to look for.
Well, we already mentioned Khor Virap in the intro.
Right. There's signature barbecue.
It's usually massive skewers of pork or lamb, marinated and grilled over wood coals. But the meat itself is only half the experience. It's the delivery system that matters.
It is always served with lavish.
Yes. Lavash is the undisputed king of the Armenian table. It is a paper-thin flatbread, but the magic lies entirely in the traditional preparation mechanism.
I read about this.
It is baked by skilled artisans who stretch the dough over a cushion and then physically slap it against the blistering hot inner walls of a tonnier, which is a traditional conical clay oven sunken into the ground.
That sounds amazing to watch.
The bread bubbles and chars in seconds.
Yeah.
The smell of fresh wood smoke and baking lavash drifting out of bakeries in the early morning is one of the defining sensory experiences of walking through Yerevan.
I can practically smell it just talking about it.
Then you have dolma.
Grape leaves stuffed with a complex mix of spiced minced meat, rice, and fresh herbs.
Yes. And the guide notes that eating proper, grandmother-made local dolma is an absolute revelation compared to the canned stuff you get in Western supermarkets.
I believe.
And if you happen to be visiting during the colder months, you have to hunt down manti.
Oh, what are those?
These are tiny, delicate, boat-shaped baked dumplings. They are served swimming in a rich, hot tomato broth, heavily topped with fresh garlic and thick yogurt.
Wow.
It is the ultimate rich winter soul food.
That sounds incredible. And we absolutely cannot discuss Armenian culture without discussing the deep mechanics of their coffee culture.
Oh, the coffee culture is practically a religion.
You aren't getting a massive watery paper cup to go.
No way.
You are getting thick, intensely dark Armenian coffee, traditionally brewed slowly in a sezve.
That small, long-handled copper pot buried in hot sand, right?
Yes. It's strong enough to wake the dead, and a cup of this at a neighborhood cafe will cost you between $800 and $1,200 AMD.
That's about $2 to $3.
Yep.
What's crucial to understand about the culinary scene here is how deeply the food is tied to the actual soil and botanical history of the land.
Right. It's not imported.
For example, did you know that Armenia is actually the scientifically recognized ancestral home of the apricot?
I did read that. The official scientific Latin name for the apricot is literally Prunus armeniaca.
Which translates to the Armenian plum.
Exactly. The fruit has been cultivated in the volcanic soil of the Ararat Plain for millennia.
So when you buy a jar of local apricot jam at a street market, you aren't just buying a sugary breakfast spread.
No.
You are consuming a literal piece of ancient botanical history that has sustained the local population through empires rising and falling.
That is an incredible way to look at it. And speaking of markets, let's establish the street economics so our listeners can visualize their day-to-day carrying costs.
Sure.
Let's make the math easy. 1,000 Armenian dram equals about $2.54.
Got it.
Let's run through a standard supermarket basket to understand the processing mechanism. If you walk into a SAS supermarket or a Yerevan city or a local Norzov queue, here's what you are paying at the register.
Get me.
A liter of milk is $1 to $1.27. A loaf of bread is 65 cents to $1. A dozen eggs is $2 to $3.05. And a bottle of local wine will run you just $3.88 to $7.60.
And we should clarify why that wine is so inexpensive.
Why is it?
It's not because it's low-quality, mass-produced filler. Armenia has been producing wine for over 6,000 years.
Wait, 6,000 years?
Yes. Archaeologists literally found the world's oldest winery in an Armenian cave. The low price is a reflection of a deeply localized agrarian supply chain.
Yeah.
The grapes are grown down the road, the labor is local, and there are zero international import taxes or shipping markups. You are paying the true local cost of production.
That makes perfect sense. You're cutting out the global middleman. And if you decide to step out of the supermarket and actually dine out, the numbers are just as staggering.
What are we looking at?
Street food, like a massive lavish wrap filled with barbecue from a vendor, is $2.50 to $3.80. A sit-down, multi-course meal at a local, traditional tavern is going to cost you between $3.18 and $7.
Wow.
Even if you decide you are homesick and you go to a fancy Western-style restaurant targeting expats, your bill is maxing out at $15.25 to $21.60.
And a beer.
A pint of draft beer is $1.52.
Well, those structural economic numbers completely explain the massive tourism boom.
They really do.
But interacting with the local food scene requires more than just handing over cheap currency.
Right.
It requires understanding the social etiquette, which is rooted in a profound historic sense of hospitality.
Yes, the guide is very specific about this. Break this down for us, because navigating a new culture's social rules can be intimidating.
Armenians are deeply culturally hospitable. It is woven into their social fabric to welcome the guest. If you are sitting in a small neighborhood restaurant and you make even minimal friendly conversation with the local table next to you, it is highly likely you will be invited to join them.
Oh, really?
Yes, they will offer to share their Khor Virap, they will pour you a drink, and they will offer a toast.
Which sounds lovely, but as an introverted traveler, my instinct might be to politely decline so I don't impose.
Sure, that's natural for a lot of people.
If that happens, what is the right move?
You must suppress your introversion and accept graciously.
Good to know.
Within the cultural framework, refusing a shared toast or declining an invitation to break bread is considered genuinely rude.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It is interpreted as a rejection of their core cultural value of welcoming the stranger. You sit, you smile, you drink the toast, and you participate in the community.
Okay, that is a fantastic piece of advice.
Yeah.
Say yes to the toast, embrace the chaos.
Exactly.
Now, moving on to the transactional side of hospitality, I have to imagine that with this massive influx of tech workers making Western salaries, the tipping culture is getting warped.
It is.
Are locals starting to expect 20% tips from everyone? And is that alienating the traditional Armenian diner?
That is an excellent observation of how nomad money alters local customs.
So what's the baseline?
The traditional baseline is that tipping is not strictly mandatory, but leaving about 10% is expected and highly appreciated at mid-range sit-down restaurants.
10%. Okay.
However, with the influx of expats used to American tipping standards, there is upward pressure in the trendier Kentron cafes.
Makes sense.
But crucially, at street food vendors, local bakeries, and open-air markets, no tip is expected. You just pay the exact price.
Good to know. And while we are talking about being out in the city, especially at night after participating in a few of those communal toasts,
Right.
we absolutely have to address safety.
On a macro level, Yerevan is genuinely one of the safest capital cities in this entire travel tier.
That's reassuring.
The rates of violent crime against tourists are statistically negligible. The city center is heavily populated, well-lit, and perfectly walkable late into the night. It has a vibrant Mediterranean-style evening culture where families and young people are out strolling the boulevards at midnight.
And what about for solo female travelers?
Yeah.
Because that is a metric that can vary wildly, even in quote-unquote safe cities.
Yerevan consistently rates very highly on global safety indexes for solo women.
Okay, great.
The standard universal urban precautions obviously apply. Don't accept drinks from strangers. Be aware of your surroundings if you are near the late-night bar district on a Bovian street after 2 a.m.
Sure, at the basics.
But there are no specific systemic patterns of street harassment that make the city notably difficult or exhausting for solo women.
That's great to hear.
The cafe, arts, and tech culture in Yerevan skews quite young, liberal, and internationally connected.
Okay, so we've established the safety, the incredible food, the transit traps, and the rent hikes.
A lot of ground covered.
Taking all these individual costs, the
Yeah.
budget beds, the 75-cent buses, the $4 lunches, what does an actual day cost depending on who you are and how you travel?
Let's open up the daily ledger and look at the profiles.
Yes, let's break it down.
We can categorize the economic data into 3 distinct traveler profiles. Let's start with what we'll call the value travelers.
So backpackers and mid-range tourists.
Right.
If you are a back-to-basics backpacker, you're staying in the $15 dorms, eating exclusively street food or supermarket groceries, taking the 100 AMD metro rides,
Yep.
and focusing your itinerary entirely on free sites like the Cascade or walking the markets.
Your daily budget is sitting between $22 and $30 a day.
Wow.
That means you can execute a full culturally immersive week in a major historical capital for $154 to $210.
In 2026, finding a safe European-adjacent capital where you can survive on $150 a week is astonishing.
It is increasingly rare. And what happens when we look at the mid-range traveler? Because this is where the value proposition really hits its stride.
The mid-range traveler is spending between $50 and $65 a day.
And what does that actually buy you?
Well, that gets you a private room in a cool boutique guest house, 3 full sit-down meals a day at good restaurants, the ability to take taxis everywhere you want to go without thinking about the cost.
And paid daily activities like museum entries or a guided wine tasting.
Exactly. A full, luxurious week of that lifestyle totals out at $350 to $455.
If we contextualize that mid-range weekly total, the expert consensus from the budget guide is that spending $400 for a phenomenal week in Yerevan is substantially less than what you would burn through in a single moderately active day in a city like Paris, Prague, or Vienna.
Without question. Now let's scale it up and look at the family math.
Let's do it.
Say you have a family of 4, 2 adults, 2 kids. You aren't staying in hostels. You want upper mid-range comfortable hotels.
Right.
You are eating full restaurant dinners every night. You're renting a car for $31 to $40 a day so you can do private day trips out to the monasteries at your own pace.
Your daily budget per person is going to hover around $100 to $140.
In a full week for all four of you, and this is the kicker, including the cost of 4 return flights from London, is going to total between $2,800 and $3,500.
Which, out of context, sounds like a substantial amount of capital to deploy for a one-week vacation.
It does.
Until, of course, you provide the comparative Mediterranean context.
Exactly. I want to compare this aggressively to Santorini or the Amalfi Coast.
Okay, let's hear the comparison.
If that exact same family of 4 tried to execute a one-week trip in Santorini during the summer with a similar itinerary.
Nice hotels, rental car, full dining, flights.
Yeah, it would easily run them $5,000 to $8,000.
Oh, at least.
Yerevan is offering families a massive multi-thousand-dollar discount for a trip that is arguably far more culturally enriching and far less crowded with cruise ship passengers.
It is a profound geographic arbitrage, but then we arrive at the final profile, the digital nomad.
And this is exactly where the romantic idea of budget travel violently collides with modern macroeconomic reality.
Yeah, this is the whale in the swimming pool effect we talked about earlier. The Russian and Ukrainian migration effect bites hardest right here.
Break down the nomad numbers.
The structural difference is that a nomad isn't staying in a hostel for 3 days. A nomad requires a functional, furnished, fast Wi-Fi apartment for a month or more.
Right.
And as we noted in the rent data, that central Kentron apartment has skyrocketed from $127 to anywhere between $400 and $650 a month.
Plus, you are there to work. You can't just sit in a cafe all day, every day.
No, you need to lease a dedicated desk at a modern co-working space like the Yukon Business Center or Impact Hub Yerevan.
And that's an additional $80 to $150 a month.
Once you add in your groceries, your weekend dining out, and your gym membership, your total monthly base spend is suddenly sitting between $900 and $1,400.
That's a huge jump from the backpacker budget.
What is critical to observe here is how the ecosystem has evolved to capture this new capital. The area around Tumanian Street has organically grown into a legitimate, buzzing startup hub precisely because of that influx of international tech workers.
The infrastructure has leveled up to meet them.
Exactly. The specialty coffee is there, the fiber optic internet is there, the craft beer bars are there. But in doing so, the baseline pricing floor of the city has fundamentally moved upward.
It's the vintage store paradox realized.
It really is.
It is no longer the $30 a day secret it was in 2019 or 2021. The economic gap between Yerevan and established premium nomad hubs like Tbilisi, Lisbon, or Bali is closing incredibly fast.
Yep.
So, knowing all these costs, let's look at what you actually do with your days, what might frustrate you, and whether another regional city might actually be a better fit for your specific travel style.
Let's explore the highs, the lows, and the competitors.
The city possesses some truly world-class, monumental experiences that punch far above its weight class.
We mentioned the Cascade Complex earlier.
Yes, tell us more about that.
This is a massive, multi-tiered limestone staircase that climbs up the side of a hill in the center of the city.
Sounds impressive.
It is. It is lined with incredible high-end contemporary sculpture.
Yeah.
And the best part, it is completely free to access. You can easily spend 2 hours walking it, exploring the indoor galleries of the Carthaginian Center for the Arts hidden beneath the stairs.
And taking in those sweeping, unobstructed views of Mount Ararat at the top.
Exactly.
I love that. Then there's the Vernissage Market. This is an absolute must-do.
Oh, for sure.
It stretches across Mashtots Park on the weekends.
Sure.
You can go there with a budget of just $15 to $40, but you have to be prepared to bargain hard.
And you aren't just buying generic tourist magnets.
No, it's this wild physical manifestation
Yeah.
of the region's history. You're haggling over literal remnants of the Soviet Union.
Like heavy military medals, old film cameras.
Exactly, alongside intricately hand-carved wooden chess sets, traditional apricot wood duduk instruments, and unlabeled, repurposed water bottles filled with powerful homemade cognac.
It's a sensory overload in the absolute best way.
It's amazing.
It is a remarkable place to interact with locals. But we must also discuss the most historically significant site in the city.
The Armenian Genocide Memorial and Museum at Sitzer-Nakabert. Yes. This requires a very different kind of preparation from the listener. This isn't a fun afternoon stroll.
No, it's very serious.
It currently holds a 4.8 rating on TripAdvisor with over 1,500 reviews, which speaks volumes about how impactful and necessary it is for visitors.
The site features a staggering 44-meter spire, an eternal flame that burns year-round, and a deeply comprehensive underground museum.
And that museum houses a massive photographic archive detailing the systematic destruction of the Armenian people in 1915.
It is free to enter, and the guide recommends allocating at least 3 hours to fully absorb the material.
But a serious note here, especially for families. This carries an immense, devastating emotional weight.
You need to prepare yourself mentally.
And if you are bringing children, you need to provide age-appropriate historical context beforehand. It is powerful, confronting, and deeply sad.
It is a somber but absolutely essential experience for anyone trying to understand the psychology, the resilience, and the modern identity of the Armenian state. To pivot to a lighter note, if you are looking for day trips outside the city limits, Khor Virap is universally recommended.
Yes. It is a striking ancient monastery located about 50 kilometers out of the city, right on the Turkish border.
And the logistics of getting there are amazing.
Hmm.
You can catch a local marshrutka, which is a shared, somewhat chaotic local minibus, for a $3 return ticket.
$3.
And when you arrive, the view of Mount Ararat rising massively directly behind the monastery is visually unmatched. It is the iconic postcard view of Armenia.
Beautiful. And finally, rounding out the major highs, you must explore the nation's brandy heritage.
The Ararat Museum at the Yerevan Brandy Company has been producing world-class cognac since 1887.
Famously, it was Winston Churchill's favorite brandy.
You can do a comprehensive historical tour and a premium tasting there, or at any of the dedicated cognac bars in Kentron for just $8 to $15.
Okay, we've talked up the highs, but the title of our source document is The Honest Budget Guide.
We have an obligation to talk about the honest disappointments.
Exactly. What is going to legitimately frustrate a traveler here?
There are two main infrastructural friction points: transit and language.
Let's start with transit.
First, the public transit system. While it is incredibly cheap at a 100 AMD a ride, it is heavily limited in scope. The Soviet-era metro system only has a single line.
Oh, that is limited.
The above-ground bus network is extensive and reaches everywhere, but it is very poorly documented in English. There are few digital maps showing precise bus routes.
So it's confusing.
If you don't have local help translating the Cyrillic or Armenian script on the bus stops, or if you aren't using the Yandex ride-hailing app, trying to navigate out to day trip destinations can be highly confusing and time-consuming.
And that leads right into the second frustration. The language barrier is very real.
It is.
Inside the trendy, youth-centric cafes in Kentron, or at the main tourist zones, you will find English. But the moment you step outside those bubbles,
English is extremely sparse.
the generation above 50 mostly speaks Armenian and Russian.
If you are trying to buy specific goods at a local market or ask a bus driver for directions, you are going to need a massive reserve of patience
A willingness to mime your intentions,
and a fully downloaded offline Google Translate app to get by.
which naturally brings us to the regional alternatives.
Right.
If those specific frustrations, a lack of English infrastructure and confusing transit, sound like deal breakers for your vacation style, what are the regional competitors you should consider?
The biggest, most obvious competitor is sitting right next door, Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia.
Tbilisi is the inevitable, natural comparison for anyone looking at the Caucasus.
It is a larger city, it is much more internationally connected, and it possesses significantly better flight infrastructure.
For instance, you can frequently get direct flights from London to Tbilisi for around $85.
Exactly. It has a much more established, polished English language tourist infrastructure, a globally recognized food and nightlife scene, and direct access to the famous Kakheti wine country.
Yeah, you have to pay for that polish.
You do.
The daily budgets in Tbilisi reflect that higher demand. You are looking at $40 to $60 a day for a basic mid-range trip, compared to Yerevan's $22 to $30.
The comparative verdict between the two cities is quite clear in the data. Tbilisi is easier, more accessible, and more polished. Yerevan is significantly rawer, less discovered, and much cheaper.
Honestly, if you have the vacation time and the stamina, the optimal approach is not to choose between them, but to do both.
You can take the classic Soviet-era overnight train between the two capitals for just $25 to $30.
Waking up on a train rolling through the Caucasus Mountains sounds like an incredible trip.
It does.
Now, the other alternative people frequently bring up when discussing ancient history on a budget is Amman, Jordan.
Amman offers a very strong comparison if your primary driver is ancient history, largely because it provides base camp access to Petra, which is just 3 hours south.
It also boasts stronger, more consistent flight connectivity from major European hubs, with returns often sitting in the $150 to $200 range.
But the ground costs in Jordan are substantially higher. Your daily budget in Amman is going to sit between $55 and $90 a day.
And while the Middle Eastern food in Oman is undeniably great, our sources argue it lacks Yerevan's stunning, unbeatable cost-to-quality ratio.
Amman wins if your lifelong dream is to see Petra and you want a very dense, heavily programmed, predictable itinerary.
But Yerevan wins, hands down, as a pure value play for a slow, culturally rich experience.
So, drawing from all the economic data, the historical context, and the logistical realities we've discussed from our sources, let's synthesize this.
Let's build the final "is it worth it" matrix for the listener in 2026.
Let's do it. Let's start with the backpackers. Is it worth it for you?
Yes. It is one of the very few European-adjacent capitals left on the map where $22 to $30 a day still buys you world-class history and incredible food.
But the major caveat, you have to act like a planner.
You must book your hostel early because the physical bed shortage is real and it will ruin your budget if you get caught out.
For the mid-range traveler, it is a strongly, emphatically yes. The sheer value of what you receive, private boutique rooms, 3 sit-down meals a day, and private wine tastings for $50 a day is entirely unparalleled in the region right now.
You are getting Western European quality at a 70% discount.
For families, yes, with preparation.
The financial savings are massive when compared to a Mediterranean holiday. The city is remarkably safe for children, but you must actively navigate that brutal summer accommodation squeeze.
And you must mentally prepare for the friction of the language barrier.
For the luxury traveler, it's situationally yes. If your definition of luxury requires Michelin stars, white glove concierge service, or opulent beach resorts, this is the wrong geography.
But if luxury to you means spending $80 to $120 to hire a private driver for bespoke, uncredited tours of ancient monasteries, followed by high-end private cognac tastings, the value is exceptional.
And finally, for the digital nomads, conditionally yes.
The city is safe, the cafe internet is fast, and that 180-day visa exemption is a massive logistical gift.
But the golden era of dirt-cheap rent is over. The price floor has permanently moved up.
It is a great place to live, but it is no longer the ultra-cheap $300 a month secret it was half a decade ago.
And that specific reality, the moving price floor, leaves us with a much broader, somewhat troubling, lingering question.
One that goes far beyond the borders of Yerevan and touches on the entire global landscape of modern travel in 2026.
As governments increasingly roll out digital nomad visas, and as massive geopolitical migrations permanently alter local real estate markets by injecting foreign tech wealth into local economies.
Are we witnessing the end of the traditional budget travel era entirely?
That's a heavy, complex thought to end on, because the implications are huge.
They really are.
When highly mobile foreign tech workers can easily relocate and permanently reprice the housing markets of cities like Yerevan, does travel fundamentally change?
Does it become less about a backpacker discovering affordable, authentic local cultures, and more about navigating a series of globalized remote work microeconomies?
Where every cafe just looks like a cheaper version of Brooklyn.
That is the exact mechanism of cultural displacement. It forces you to ask, what happens to the actual soul of the Pink City when its historic center is priced exclusively for the global digital laptop class?
While the local Armenians, the people who actually baked the lavish, carved the stone, and built the culture, are economically pushed to the invisible peripheries of their own capital.
It makes you wonder what that $4 lunch we talked about at the beginning will actually cost in 2030.
Or if the family running that cafe will even be able to afford their lease to serve it at all.
It is a lot to think about the next time you sit down at that weathered wooden table in the warm afternoon light, looking out at a magnificent mountain you can never physically reach.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Yerevan 2026. Keep exploring the complexities and the hidden mechanisms behind the places you go, because the real story is always deeper than the price tag.